And we are live with Cynthia Dill, and I'm pleased to have back in the studio via the internet David Hughes, Cape Elizabeth candidate for town council. Welcome back to the show, David.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, your signs have been around town, of course, for your election for town council, but now there is a new school of signs about saving the cookie jar. So I thought we'd talk tonight a little bit about how it is you think your candidacy for town council here in Cape Elizabeth can do anything to help the cookie jar. And why don't we just start by talking about what you know of the issue?
All right. Well, that got ugly fast, at least on the Facebook.
Oh, I don't mean it to be ugly at all.
No. I meant no. Not you. I'm talking about the comments on the Facebook. They got pretty ugly fast, and I just chose not to even be involved in them. We have a long-standing business, the cookie jar. I don't know, 50 some odd years here in town. The situation, they've always had the parking in front. I know a number of years ago, there was a move afoot to try to remove those spots for some street improvement activities that never took place. And most recently, Donna needed to modify her site in order to open up a back access to her driveway to facilitate deliveries for materials and supplies. Otherwise, the trucks, in order to get into her site, they have to back into from Shore Road or back out onto Shore Road from her driveway because she doesn't have a exit out onto what's that street? Preble Street?
Preble Street, yeah.
So, this would have improved the situation, but, according to the planning board, it kicks it up to a full site plan review, which makes you need to come into compliance with everything, which would eliminate her front parking spaces.
It's hard to understand how it is that, as I understand the issue, and I spent some time researching, it's exactly what you said, but just to provide a little context for the people who might not be fully in tune. The cookie jar is an iconic business here in Cape Elizabeth on Shore Road, and the current owners have owned it since, I think, 1981, and it's been there basically since like the 1950s.
Correct.
And unfortunately, a couple of things have happened. I mean, there's been a lot of increase in traffic, and that has put pressure on all these businesses, but also there's a dispute between now the cookie jar and the adjacent neighbor. It's a legitimate dispute, and I see both sides of it. I mean, the service center has said publicly that, look, we can't do things the way we've always done it because it's not safe, and people are whipping through this right of way, and it's impacting our business. But what the cookie jar wants to do is just sort of do a cutout onto Preble Street, and I think the big question is, why in the first place does this have to have a site plan review? And I think a lot of people just wonder if that's the problem in all of this, is somehow the town planner sort of just suggested to the planning board, like, oh yeah, this needs site plan review, and I'm not sure that it does. Do you know if it in fact?
I don't. I'm not a planner. I don't pretend to be one, but it just seems crazy to me that if she did nothing, the the parking spots would remain,
right,
and her delivery trucks would back in or back off, back onto Shore Road, making, in my opinion, that's more of a hazard. Those are big trucks, and they can't see. I mean, I don't want to get into the dispute piece because that gentleman that owns the garage, I mean, he has a perfect right to his property.
Yeah, absolutely.
His property. And I think that's the biggest misunderstanding out there. People look at the cookie jar and say, well, they got plenty of parking on the side. They don't. That's not their property. It's the garage's property. And that needs to be respected.
I think some people think that the raising of this issue by you and Counselor Andrews, and we can talk about that a little bit,
Mhm.
is not entirely based on a concern about the success of the cookie jar, but instead is a way, a sort of an off road into the campaign to point out that the planning board chair, Jonathan Sarbeck, who, by the way, was invited to join tonight. I don't think he's going to, but I did send him an invitation. Maybe he'll pop up. Uh, that this is sort of a political stunt. That you and David Andrews are using this situation to point fingers at the planning board chair because he's your opponent in a political race. What do you say to that?
Well, I never mentioned his name at all. This literally came to, boiled up to the top last week. My campaign has, look at the original publications, it focused on being business friendly. And I've spoken a lot about the issues regarding the lumbery and how all that unfolded. And during the high school debate, I spoke about the lumbery there during my opening comments and said, we need to do better. And we're not. It seems like, this is lumbery 2.0.
It is odd timing on the heels of the lumbery debacle to have this issue suddenly on the forefront. And I was at the planning board workshop when the idea was first presented, and it really struck me as a member of the audience. I was there because there was going to be, in addition to the cookie jar issue, the issue of the town center zoning amendments, and I was interested in that. So I happened to catch this cookie jar discussion, and what just it dawned on me immediately was just that there was no sense of urgency on the part of most of the planning board about this situation. That here was an applicant, or not even an applicant, just a business owner before the planning board. They could have, I think, said, "Look, this is a de minimis issue. We don't need site plan review." Or quickly get it to the town council. But it seemed to me the response is, well, our hands are tied. We just have to do this long drawn out process, and this applicant has to spend all kinds of money for a site plan review for essentially, which is just basically improving their driveway.
Yeah,
And
it's exactly that. It's improving their driveway. That area of town is awful. There isn't a curb for 500 feet from the South Portland line up to Preble Street. It's just pavement, and there's no defined driveway anywhere. And there's at least 4 lots I think involved in all of that, not just the cookie jar. This if if the town wants to improve that area, let's do it right, not lot by lot, and actually design something that will improve the coming into town, how it looks, but also the safety issues. If she loses those lots, those parking spots, the other options are what? On-street parking. And how many people do you want crossing that road from the opposite side on a daily basis to get into the cookie jar? I think that'd actually be a lot more unsafe than
so you and David Andrews, both your names appear on the new signs around town that say enough
Mhm.
is enough.
Mhm.
What do you think you could do as a town councilor in this situation to improve things or do anything differently?
Well, I certainly call either put it on the agenda to work with the planning board to either make this a de minimis change and keep the situation the way the parking spots the way they are for now. And then maybe what we need to do is, pay for some type of engineering study to look at that specific entire area for what we can do, you know.
Now, there's some people in town who believe that the shelf life of the town planner position has expired and that we should be looking at different models because there appears to be a lot of conflict around the planning process lately. Do you have an opinion about that?
Um, I'm not too pleased with what I've seen, um, but she also hasn't worked under any time frame that I have been, town council. I mean, if the pleasure of the council changes and wants her to conduct her duties differently, and she refuses to do so, or just at that point in time, I think it's time to make a change. If the pleasure of the board changes how they want her to do her job, and she does do it, I mean, to her credit, she should continue.
Well, I think some people think that maybe the job itself should be broadened to a more like economic and community development director. I'm not sure about that. I think our planner has a lot of achievements on her, on her resume in terms of the unbelievably extensive and beautiful trail system. I think that's in large part because of, her efforts, with others, of course. But she does have a lot of power and is the gatekeeper to so many to so many people advancing their ideas. And there's unfortunately, it appears to be a pattern that if you get in her way, then she'll get in your way down the road. I don't
Yeah,
know if if that's exactly true, but that's my observation. So I just wonder if maybe the cookie jar, causing a little bit of controversy a couple years ago with the Shore Road Improvement Plan, if this is like sort of like them getting spanked for being a fly in the ointment a couple of years ago. I'm not sure about that, but, in terms of the campaign, the
mhm.
Enough is Enough, there's also a petition going around.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you been involved in that, and why do you think why
I
should
think
people sign the petition?
it's just to get a pulse of the of the people. I mean, it's you click a button if you support the cookie jar, and that has gotten some traction. And I was at work today, and my secretary actually goes, "Hey Dave, did you know that Cape's trying to take away the parking spots over for the cookie jar?" You know, and I'm like, "How do you know about that?" My cousin sent me the link to the website, so it is getting some traction. It's getting people's attention, which I think is good. I mean, this needs to be brought to people's attention.
Have you had any conversations personally with the cookie jar about your efforts to save them, or is this something you're doing independent of the business?
Independent, actually. I have had conversations with Donna. I went out there last weekend, and I spent over an hour there just walking around and looking, and watching the traffic, watching the cars backing out. Um,
Buying a donut, I hope?
I didn't actually.
What?
I didn't. Donna ended up coming out. I think they saw me kind of walking around trying to figure out who I was, and so I chatted with her, and she showed me where the survey pin for the corner of the property of the where the public right of way ends in the garage, and pointed out where her driveway is, and so those discussions were helpful. But I wanted to put my eyes on it, and um, she knows now. But I think it's something that it's such an iconic feature. If she did nothing, the parking lots spots would stay. Um, Opening up the back of her driveway, giving her another driveway cut, improves the situation. Why can't we do that?
So, do you think, like in terms of the campaign and the election, is this an issue that is resonating with voters? Is this something that's going to carry you across the finish line, do you think?
I don't know. It's something I spoke about in my campaign materials. I think we said it, and frankly it got teed up for us, or for me. by the planning board, and it's will it carry me over? I think the primary issue is the school bond. Um, and I think a lot of people are making their selections based on who's voting on who's supporting which side of the bond issue.
Well, it's tricky for the cookie jar because they obviously have to serve a clientele and wanna do business and be profitable and don't want to offend anybody. So they can't necessarily align with people in some of these hotly, contested political races, but I'm sure they appreciate the support. I hope there's not a backlash. I mean, some people think that this grouping of you and David Andrews and Tim Reiniger is off-putting because it suggests there's some force behind the scenes that's controlling the campaigns and perhaps might call into question your independence should you be elected. Can you say anything about that? I mean, you are aligned with these other two candidates. Does that mean that if you're elected, you'll always be together as a team?
I'm extremely independent. You know, Tim is a friend of mine and has been for a long time. And Dave, I actually just met recently. His background is similar to mine with regards to engineering and construction management. So we kind of think a lot alike. Um, and but that being said, I'm one of six kids. I've got a long boarding house for each. I've learned to stand up for myself under any
Where do
circumstances.
you fall in the lineup of 6?
Number three.
Oh, so you yeah.
So, yeah, I was number three. 4 girls with 2 boys.
Well, I'm sure you did have to fight, to for your own spot, your own voice,
Oh,
in that lineup.
absolutely, absolutely.
And so it really, I think what brought you and Andrews and Reiniger together, like you said earlier on, is this school bond issue, because that is really, for a lot of people in Cape Elizabeth, the driving issue. Have you seen any changes in the conversation around that? Or do you have
Uh,
any do you have any, prediction on how the bond question is gonna fall one way or the other come election day?
sure. I want to back up about you saying our alliance. You're calling it that, and my independence. I mean, the same could be said of the other side. I mean, you see the signs: vote for the 4 S's.
That's true.
So,
Well, and
I know
yeah.
they've had targeted mailing and what have you, but with regards to the bond, I don't know if it's just the people that come to me. I've enjoyed my time up at the swap shop. When I go there and talk to people, and there, I would say the majority of people that talk to me, have been against the bond. And
And do you get the sense that issue is gonna decide who they're gonna vote for? So it's gonna be
I
easy?
do, I do, because
In that regard, your point earlier, I think, is one well taken, and that is that it was sort of set up this way, that the school bond issue was the deciding issue, and the S's separated themselves on the school bond issue, and also by party, the Democrats have endorsed the other 3. So
yeah,
so there's been a lot of things about this race that have, sort of separated the 2 camps. What's gonna be really interesting is I kinda doubt that the 3 and 3 is gonna be as neatly,
divided.
right, come, November 5th, or the day after the election. So
Yeah.
then what's gonna happen, I think, when the bond fails, I may have asked you this, but I wanna ask you again for tonight's show. If the bond fails and you're elected, would
You
you
just said when.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, when
You just said when.
sorry about that. A slip, yeah, a Freudian slip perhaps. If the bond fails
Mhm.
and if you are elected, will you vote early to, put option B out for like a snap election to take the pulse of the citizens on that? Because I think the people who are opposed to the school bond, the capevoters.com, I mean, they are doing huge campaign to defeat this bond. But then if the tables are turned and option B goes out to the voters, they're going to have their work cut out because then they're going to have to convince voters that this one that's not even that less expensive. I mean, of course, it's millions of dollars less expensive, but in the big scheme of things, it doesn't sound that much different between 94.7 and whatever the option B was, 80 million. So would you support putting option B out immediately to see if that can pass, or what are you thinking will be your next move?
I think we need to move forward with a version of option B, personally, and I think we should move forward with it as quickly as possible. I think the votes are out there to support it. You're not going to get everybody. At least I know the schools need some significant improvement, and it's just a matter of how we want to do it. I want to do it in a more of a cost-effective way that will help preserve people's taxes, people's money.
One place of common ground that you have with Andrew Swayze and Jonathan Sarback is apparently you're all of you are going to get dunked at the Harvest Fest this weekend at the Pond Cove Halloween party. That sounds like a lot of fun.
No,
Have you been dunked before?
Yes, at my son's birthday party. But who else is doing it?
Well, according to my information, yourself, Andrew Swayze, and Jonathan Sarback from the town council candidates, and then a school board candidate, Chris Bonikowski. So good for you all for participating in that.
Let's put the gauntlet down, see who can raise the most money.
There you go. There's a challenge. You've had like the best campaign weather I've really it seems like we've had for it's been absolutely perfect. Are there people, talking to you about other issues than the school bond? Are people talking to you, for instance, about the Trump-Harris race or what's going on at the state level? What are you hearing from people other than the school bonds when you're out campaigning?
Oddly enough, I never thought local politics would be more interesting than national politics. I've had very few people talk to me about the Trump-Harris race. I've had a few people say, "Who are you voting for?" or "Is Trump your friend?" or that type of stuff. But very few. I can't say that I've talked to anybody about the national politics at all.
Have you been asked about your positions on issues like abortion?
No.
What about like transgender stuff? Has that come up in your conversations?
That has not come up. ADUs has come up. Accessory dwelling units, and affordable housing. Those two items have come up, but very minor. As the majority is, I would say 95% of the conversation is about the bond.
And do you have an opinion about if the bond fails and do you have an opinion about the superintendent and the path forward for the relationship between the town council and the school board and where the superintendent falls into this if we're on the heels of two bonds failing?
Well, I was a little disheartened during the school debate when the kids asked the question. It was a very appropriate question. What would you do if the bond failed and you support the bond? To the three S's, and and as I recall, the answer was, well, we'd have to study it and figure out why they voted no. And it's like,
brother,
I think we've done that already. It's time to move forward. Of course, they asked a similar question: what if you get elected for myself and the bond passes? What will you do? I said, well, I mean, the people have spoken, and we got to move forward with the the project as was presented in the bond. I do my due diligence to make sure that, we get, we pay for and we stay within budget and all that type of stuff. I'm good at that. So, but we move forward. But as I say, I was very disheartened by that response from the three S's.
The S's being Swayze, Sarbeck, and I'm trying to think of the third S.
Um,
Oh, Skyfreeze, Elizabeth Skyfreeze. Maybe I'm not pronouncing your name wrong.
yeah,
I think it's Skyfreeze. Excuse me, I apologize.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Another topic that has come up recently that is related to the cookie jar issue because it involves the planning board and specifically ideas of the planner are the new town center zoning amendments that are described as being requested by Dr. Jacobson's, the new developer of Ocean House Commons, but in fact, they're above and beyond what was requested by Hardy Pond Construction for purposes of that project. They increased the density pretty substantially above and beyond what was asked for by by the developer. Do you have any opinion about the proposed new town center zoning amendments?
I'm against them. I mean, it's just a repeat of what the citizens voted down. I think the Hardy Pond, request was reasonable, and we could have moved forward with it. And then take this opportunity to reform it and back into the original proposal, I think is bad form.
Well, this is what really I don't know, bugs me a little bit is that a lot of times the response about, if you want to get information or feedback or even provide feedback to the planning board, you're told, well, it's a quasi judicial body. And so, they can't talk about it. But really, it's not a quasi judicial body. It's a policy making body because what happens is they get the directive from the town council saying, this Hardy Pond wants to do this particular project and they need density of, 1 unit for every 2,000 square feet, for instance. But then the planning board decides in its wisdom, well, instead, we're going to draft an amendment that makes the density 1,500 feet. That's not quasi judicial, that's legislative.
Exactly. It's ludicrous. I mean, we have a project in front of us that wants to be built, and the current town council is in support of it. But by what I can see, why can't we move forward with it?
I know it's atrophy is a powerful inertia is a powerful force, but it seems to me that we should be able to overcome when things are as important as getting projects like these up and coming. I'm really interested in the contract zoning idea because I think it removes this power of the planning board to sort of behind the scenes legislate and instead gives power to the town council to directly negotiate with somebody who wants a zoning amendment for a particular project based on the merits of that particular project instead of pretending that, oh, this is a zoning amendment, it's going to apply, across the board. And I just don't think it's fair to the rest of the property owners in the town center district. It should be fair rules across the board. That's my plug for
Yeah,
fairness.
absolutely. I think the contract zoning is a great avenue. They've used it a lot in Scarborough. I believe the Scarborough Downs project there's a lot of contract zoning in that piece. Obviously that falls under their town council, but it works.
Well, David Hughes, is there anything else you'd like to tell viewers? There's 2 weeks until Election Day. The polls are open. Early voting ends October 31st, and then it's just off to the races.
Yeah, I mean, come talk to me. I love a good conversation. I've been down at the swap shop and I've had a few people come up to me and said, I'm not voting for you. I'm like, that's okay. Why? Let's have that conversation. And I enjoy that. As long as it's done in a respectful manner. And having different opinions or different ideas is a good thing. I think having individuals on the town council that don't agree with each other really does a good job at driving a project to the best that it can be.
Have you discovered any disagreements with your compatriots, Andrews and Reiniger, since you are sort of like running as a team to a certain extent? Are there any areas that you know where you don't agree?
You make it sound like we're roommates. I see Tim. I think I've seen him on the Zoom more than I actually seen him. I can't tell you actually the last time I saw him, or even had a conversation with him. And Dave, I saw last night for about a half hour as we handed out signs for the cookie jar. Um, you know, I haven't, but we haven't gotten into any of the nitty gritty dirt and details of things either. David's on the was on the school board advisory committee, so he knows the details about that. And Tim, he's an attorney. I mean, and he comes off as one sometimes. I know you are too, but attorneys can be a little bit of an odd duck here and there.
A little annoying.
Yeah. So, but
Tim, interestingly, I think also went to diplomacy school, like
did he really?
down in Washington, D.C. Yeah.
You know more than I do.
Um, Speaking of Tim and getting back to the cookie jar, rumor has it that there's going to be this special meeting Monday night to address the cookie jar. Do you know anything about that?
I don't. I actually don't know anything about it.
Well, David Hughes, thank you again for coming back on the show, for putting yourself out there, for campaigning, putting in the hard work, and
Thank
I hope
you.
you come back.
I appreciate it. I certainly will if you'll have me, and we'll continue the conversation. And if not, maybe on the flip side of the election, hopefully I'm on the positive side of the votes and can speak to you wearing the town councilor's hat. So.
Yeah, then I can really put the screws to you because then
Yeah.
you have to vote. All right. Well, thanks again. Good night.
Good night. Bye.
And good night.